A storm begins with a whisper, a ripple in the air, so small it feels meaningless. The flap of a butterfly's wings, a breath in the wrong direction, a heartbeat that skips for only a second. Yet that whisper can spiral into a hurricane. That single breath can shift the future. This is the story of the butterfly effect. A story of chaos, chance, and consequences that spiral far beyond intention. Imagine if one person takes a wrong turn, one leader hesitates, one soldier misfires a gun, one scientist spills a vial, one farmer plants a seed too early, and the world we know suddenly unfolds along an entirely different path. At first, it seems impossible. How could such tiny events alter the course of history? But history itself is proof that the smallest cracks can shatter empires. In the year 1914, an archduke rode through the streets of Sarajevo. His name was Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. His motorcade wound through the city, tense with whispers of rebellion. Along the road, assassins waited, young nationalists with shaky hands and cheap weapons. They wanted to strike a blow against an empire. One of them threw a bomb. It bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded under the wheels of another vehicle. The attack failed. Chaos erupted. Soldiers rushed in. The motorcade raced away. Franz Ferdinand survived, and yet fate wasn't finished. Hours later, his driver took a wrong turn. An insignificant mistake, a tiny detail in the fabric of history. By chance, the car stopped directly in front of another assassin, Gavrilo Princip, who stepped forward and pulled the trigger. 2 bullets, one small mistake in a turn, and the world descended into the First World War. Over 20 million lives lost, empires shattered, borders redrawn, revolutions born, and seeds of an even greater conflict planted. A driver's wrong turn, a street corner, a hesitation, and the entire 20th century took shape. That is the butterfly effect. But the story does not belong to kings and empires alone. It belongs to you. Consider your own life. A missed bus, a casual meeting, a stranger you sit beside on a train. These small accidents ripple out. A missed bus means you walk instead, and on that walk, you meet someone who changes your life. A casual conversation sparks a chain of events that alters your career, your friendships, your destiny. The butterfly effect is not a fantasy. It is the mathematics of chaos. In the 1960s, meteorologist Edward Lorenz tried to predict the weather. He entered numbers into his computer, rounding a single decimal point from 506,127 to 506. The change was barely noticeable, but the weather model he built shifted entirely. From this came a revelation. Small differences in initial conditions can lead to vastly different outcomes. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil, he said, could set off a tornado in Texas. Now step back. What if other moments in history were shaped not by grand plans, but by accidents so small they almost slipped through the cracks? In 1928, Alexander Fleming left his lab untidy. Petri dishes sat out, forgotten. He returned days later to discover mold had killed off colonies of bacteria. A careless mistake, an oversight. That mold was penicillin, the first antibiotic. A simple accident saved millions of lives, reshaping medicine, warfare, and survival itself. But not all accidents bring salvation. Sometimes, the butterfly carries ruin. In 1986, inside the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, engineers conducted a safety test. They miscalculated, hesitated, and ignored warnings. A chain of small errors built into disaster. The reactor exploded. Radiation spilled across Europe. Towns became ghost cities. Lives shattered in silence. What if a single engineer had spoken louder, had refused to continue? Would the explosion still have happened? The question haunts us. How fragile is history? And how often do we teeter on the edge without realizing it? Consider Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1812, his army marched into Russia, one of the largest forces Europe had ever seen. He expected a quick victory, but the Russians burned their own cities, retreated deeper into their land, and left Napoleon stranded in the Russian winter. Thousands froze, starved, and died. But there is a hidden detail. Had the Russian summer lasted just a few weeks longer, had the winter been delayed, Napoleon's army might have survived. A slight shift in weather mere weeks decided the fate of empires. The butterfly effect whispers in every direction. Sometimes it shapes science, sometimes politics, sometimes the pulse of everyday lives. One of the greatest accidents in exploration occurred when Christopher Columbus set sail in 1492. He wasn't looking for the Americas. He sought Asia, miscalculating the Earth's circumference. He was wrong, but the mistake led him to land on islands no European had documented before. That mistake unraveled centuries of conquest, colonization, disease, trade, war, and revolution. A wrong calculation carved the modern world. The butterfly effect is not only about mistakes. It is about the fragility of patterns. The spread of a virus begins with one host. A pandemic spreads with a handshake, a sneeze, a single moment of contact. COVID-19 began in obscurity. One animal, one transmission, one unnoticed spark, and spiraled into a global shutdown. Planes grounded, cities silenced, economies shaken, billions isolated. For years, humanity shifted course because of an event so small that no one noticed at the time. That is how history unfolds, not in sweeping strokes of destiny, but in fragile threads of chance woven together. And yet, the butterfly effect is not only tragedy, it also creates wonder. In 1977, two spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, were launched to explore the outer planets. The timing was precise, chosen because of a rare alignment of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. That alignment happens only once every 176 years. A slight delay, a single miscalculation, and humanity might have missed its chance. But Voyager launched at the right moment, and decades later, it now drifts beyond the solar system, carrying messages from Earth into the unknown. The question becomes haunting. How much of what we call destiny is really the accident of chance, a wrong turn, a forgotten dish, a missed decimal, a mistimed season? And yet, each ripple grows until it becomes a wave. The butterfly flaps and the world changes. Imagine a man oversleeping, a detail so trivial it barely matters. But what if that man was responsible for relaying a warning? In December 1941, radar operators in Hawaii detected a large formation of planes approaching Pearl Harbor. They reported it, but the officer who received the message dismissed it. He assumed they were American B-17 bombers arriving from the mainland. A misunderstanding, a brush of arrogance, a butterfly's wing. Hours later, Japanese bombers descended on Pearl Harbor, destroying battleships, killing thousands, and forcing America into World War II. That officer's dismissal changed the balance of global power, and with it, the future of the modern world. Wars are made not only by strategies, but by accidents. In 480 BC, the Persian king Xerxes prepared to crush Greece. His army was enormous, his fleet vast. Yet a storm struck at sea, scattering and sinking Persian ships. Without that storm, the Greeks might have been overwhelmed. Democracy might have perished before it took root, and Western civilization might have followed an entirely different path. One storm, one gust of wind, and history bent in a new direction. Think about technology. In 1945, a young scientist named Percy Spencer was working with radar equipment. He noticed something strange. A chocolate bar in his pocket began to melt while he stood near the machine. Instead of ignoring it, he investigated. That accident gave birth to the microwave oven, transforming kitchens around the world. A melted chocolate bar became the spark of a global industry, This is how fragile invention truly is. But sometimes, the butterfly effect feels darker. In 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world stood on the edge of nuclear war. Soviet submarines armed with nuclear torpedoes floated near American ships. The Americans dropped depth charges, trying to force them to surface. One submarine captain wanted to launch his nuclear weapon in retaliation. The only thing that stopped him was the decision of another officer, Vasily Arkhipov, who refused to agree. That single refusal prevented a global nuclear war. One man's hesitation, one voice of reason, saved the world from destruction. Imagine if he had stayed silent. The butterfly's wings would have burned continents. Even nature holds its own accidents. In 1958, a farmer in Yunnan province, China, noticed that sparrows were eating his grain. The government launched a campaign to kill sparrows across the country. Millions of birds were exterminated. At first, it seemed like a victory. But sparrows had eaten not only grain, they had eaten insects too. Without them, locusts multiplied uncontrollably, devouring crops and contributing to a famine that killed tens of millions. A single misunderstanding of nature, one campaign, one policy, and the result was tragedy on an unimaginable scale. History is littered with these moments. A British soldier in World War I spared the life of a wounded enemy. That enemy was Adolf Hitler. A fleeting act of mercy prolonged the life of a man who would ignite the next great war. Was it kindness? Was it fate? Or was it simply chance playing with the threads of time? Small errors also shape exploration. In 1969, Apollo 11 prepared to land on the moon. But as the lunar module descended, alarms sounded: computer overloads, miscalculations, danger. Neil Armstrong had only seconds to decide. He took manual control, steering away from a crater and landing safely. A fraction of hesitation, a misstep, and the mission could have ended in disaster. Instead, humanity stepped onto another world. The difference between triumph and catastrophe was measured in seconds. The butterfly effect does not only live in war and science, it exists in art. Vincent van Gogh, an unknown painter in his lifetime, sold barely one painting. But after his death, his work was discovered and celebrated, shaping modern art forever. What if a collector had ignored his canvases? What if his letters had been destroyed? Would we still see the swirling stars of his vision? Or would they have vanished into obscurity? Consider music. In 1954, a young truck driver walked into a recording studio in Memphis. He was supposed to record a simple song for his mother's birthday. But as he played, the studio owner heard something raw and electric. That man was Elvis Presley, and that moment launched rock and roll into the world. A gift recording, a casual accident, changed global culture. Without it, perhaps the world would never have known the sound that shook generations. Even survival itself is tangled in chance. In 1931, a man named Adolf Hitler survived an assassination attempt when a bomb planted in a beer hall exploded minutes after he left. Had the timing shifted, had the assassin acted slightly sooner, World War II might have been avoided. Millions of lives spared, history entirely rewritten. Timing seconds, not hours, decided the fate of nations. What makes the butterfly effect terrifying is not just its scale, but its unpredictability. In 1980, a worker drilling near a village in Mexico struck an ancient cave system. He stumbled into crystal formations, the size of cathedrals, hidden for hundreds of thousands of years. The cave of the crystals revealed wonders beyond imagination. But the moment was accidental. What if his drill had shifted a few meters away? Perhaps the world would still be unaware of one of Earth's greatest natural treasures. This is the paradox. The butterfly effect tells us that we control less than we imagine, yet also that every decision we make, however small, carries unimaginable weight. A smile to a stranger, A word spoken in anger, a hesitation at a stoplight, all ripple outward into eternity. As we peel back the layers of history, we see a universe not driven only by grand design, but by chaos and chance. A mold in a dish, a decimal in an equation, a driver taking the wrong street, a man saying no when the world was ready to say yes to destruction. The butterfly's wings never stop beating. The question is not whether they shape the world, but how. Somewhere right now, a decision is being made that will ripple into the future. It could be in a lab, in a battlefield, in an office, or in an ordinary home. It could be as small as choosing to answer a phone call, or as trivial as deciding what street to walk down. Yet these choices, invisible and unrecorded, will shape lives we may never know. That is the terrifying and beautiful truth of the butterfly effect. When we think of history, we imagine powerful leaders, epic battles, sweeping revolutions. But beneath it all, history is fragile, held together by accidents. In 1971, a computer glitch nearly triggered a nuclear response in the Soviet Union. The system mistakenly registered an American missile attack. One officer, Stanislav Petrov, chose not to follow protocol. He trusted his instincts, declared it a false alarm, and refused to launch retaliation. He was right. The world continued. A different choice, a single push of a button, and history might have ended that night in fire. Think about how many times our species has walked unknowingly on the edge of extinction. In 1889, a dam near Johnstown, Pennsylvania, weakened. Maintenance was neglected, warnings ignored. When it burst, a wall of water destroyed the town, killing thousands. Neglect, oversight, delay, and death followed. The butterfly effect doesn't need malice. It only needs carelessness. But it also gifts us unexpected miracles. In 1990, the Hubble Space Telescope launched into orbit. At first, it was a disaster. Its mirror was flawed, the images blurry. Billions of dollars wasted. Yet instead of abandoning it, scientists improvised, repaired, adapted. From those adjustments came images of galaxies, nebulae, and the vast depths of the universe. A mistake became a window into infinity. Consider sports. In 1982, a college basketball player missed a routine shot in a tournament game. That player was Michael Jordan. The miss haunted him, fueling his obsession with practice. Without that failure, would Jordan have become the legend who reshaped basketball, who inspired generations across the globe? Sometimes, failure itself is the butterfly's wing. And what about your own life? The butterfly effect is not locked in history books. It is alive in every heartbeat. Think of the people you know, the places you've been, the choices that defined you. A single moment of hesitation or courage, a conversation, a letter, a chance encounter, they shape the fabric of your story. You are not only touched by the butterfly effect, you are part of it. Every small decision you make ripples outward into others' lives. You might be the turning point in someone else's story without ever knowing it. It is unsettling. It means we cannot predict where our choices will lead. But it also means that we carry power. To be kind when others are cruel. To listen when others dismiss. To act when silence would be easier. History tells us that the smallest acts often matter the most. Look back at the beginning. A driver's wrong turn in Sarajevo set the world aflame. A mold in a dish saved millions. A single officer's refusal during the Cold War saved the Earth itself. What connects these stories is not only chance, but the reminder that chaos and meaning exist side by side. We live in a universe where the smallest breath can change eternity. And so the question becomes, what wings are you flapping today? The decision you make now, the word you speak, the silence you hold, it could shape more than you will ever know. A stranger's future, a community's destiny, perhaps even the survival of the world itself. The butterfly effect is not a myth. It is the unseen pattern woven into our lives. It is the chaos that makes history fragile and the chance that makes life extraordinary. One small mistake, one forgotten detail, one ordinary choice can ignite a storm that echoes through centuries. The butterfly is always in flight. Its wings are beating. And so is yours.